disappeared.
Yeah, we've gone live. Hi. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. I'm Latika, your host for today's session. With us, we have our guest speaker, Mr. Raj Manohar, who is the co-founder and CEO of Aquaponics, that's South Asia's largest aqua farmers network. He's an IIT Kanpur graduate and has been named as among the Young Global Leaders 2012 by the World Economic Forum. Aquaponics is a deep learning startup that works essentially with the shrimp and fish aquaculture farmers to improve their productivity. Also with us, we have Mr. Padma Kumar, the co-founder and CEO of Community Farm, and Mr. Prabhav, the director of Easy Krishi. I'd now like to hand over the mic to our startups, that is Community Farm and Easy Krishi, which are part of the top 15 of Conquest 2020. Right? I'd give them a minute to introduce themselves, and then we move on to the fireside discussion. Padma Kumar.
Thank you, Latika. Thank you so much, and thank you, Raj. Myself, Padma Kumar, co-founder and CEO of Community Farm. We are a Bangalore-based e-commerce startup to create a curated marketplace for farmers, primarily farmers who follow good agriculture practices like organic farmers and natural farming farmers. We have started our operation in 2018. And initially, we started supporting farmers, but over a period of time, startups and other. Just one second. Take this mobile. Yeah, it will come back. Startups working in the agri and I'm extremely sorry. Startups working in the agri and food sector, they also have started participating in our platform. So we solve some of their common problems like the technology and logistics support, and we do home delivery. As of today, we have presence in around 500 plus communities in Bangalore and catering to around 4,000 to 5,000 customers. Thank you so much.
Right, Prabhav, if you could also introduce yourself. Hello. I think there's some sort of technical difficulty. I think we can begin with the session now. The main topic in question would be the streamlining of agriculture and food supply chain post-COVID. And of course, the emerging trends, the innovations, and the strategic issues in the industry. So, Raj, if you could shed some light on the same.
Sorry, Latika, I lost you at the last sentence.
Right. The topics for today's fireside chat are basically the streamlining of agriculture and the food supply chain, post-COVID that is, and the emerging trends, the innovations and strategic issues of your industry. So if there's any takes, if there's any anything you would like to comment on.
Absolutely. So, see, every business has transformed during this, during COVID, and we are expecting a larger transformation happening post COVID. So I would start with my home. What happened? So it's about 4 months. Like I have seen a lot of digital transformation happening around me. Like with my son, with my mom, and like one of our auditor who is like 65 years old. He has never, every time I used to call him up, he would always say like, "Why don't you, drop in at my office?" It was as like every time I pick him up and then ask for a doubt on balance sheet or cash flow, whatever it is, he would always say like, why don't we catch up at our office tomorrow, right? So these things have kind of tremendously changed, right? So like 4 months ago, I would have never let my son operating this Google Meet or Google classes, and this is completely changed. Now he knows more than me, like how do he was like today we were talking about like how do I introduce grid view. Like he's like in a class there are like some 30 folks, like we never get into such meetings, like maybe like some 5 or 6, and there are like 30 folks. So he found a snippet of code, Google Chrome plugin. So he has put in there, and now I could see grid view there. So that's transformation that I have seen at my close circle. So of course, we all know that it's no secret that everybody's life has negatively impacted. And the silver lining of COVID so far, what I have seen is the digital transformation. So to give you an example, what happened we used to have about 6,000 active users in the month of Feb and March, and this COVID happened. And imagine we now have about 10x active users on our platform. So this is the silver lining of COVID that I'm talking about. So in terms of there are some good things happen for startups. There are some extremely bad things happen for startups Baiju. I won't call them startup anymore, but for startups like Baiju or whoever are the enablers of digital education or digital content providers, they have tremendous success during this point of time. But unfortunately, we have a mix of feedbacks coming from AgriTech startups. So it depends on where you are positioned in the value chain. Let me slice it up for the sake of the audience. Is the value chain here. So there are certain startups who are participating in the upstreams of the AgriTech value chain. So I'm talking about agri, I'm talking about dairy and fisheries too, because fisheries is a niche play. As it comes under the umbrella of food production system. So the first part, just a moment. So the first part is the upstream of value chain intervention. So what happened there was we weren't getting enough forces like workforce to be running the planting or to be doing the harvesting such things. So in my experiences, I have seen that you would have seen it in the headlines of news is that people were moving from their work base to their native places. So it has hit really hard the farm sector, especially the fishery sectors that we work in. And due to the logistics lockdown. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yes, yes.
Great. So due to the logistics lockdown that had happened, it is still happening in some parts of India. So the input that had to go to the farm or the output that has to come out from the farm, they were kind of stressed, the logistics of those products. So that had impact on the pricing as well. Um, and there are other issues that the farm advisory services people who had to visit farmers and then who has to handhold. So those are the people who were really were not able to move into the farms. So that negatively impacts the farmers production efficiency. So this is where some of the startups have come up with providing digital services to the farmers. So previously it used to be something like the farmers used to come to the mandi for selling their harvested commodity, and now some of the startups have gone down to the farms and they have changed that game. So it has become something like Swiggy kind of a model that will be evolving over a period of time. You don't need to go to the mandi. You don't need to go to the stores to purchase the input. Everything will come down to your farm doorstep. So this is the kind of change that might happen over the period of time, because as I given the example of my son, he started using Google Meet. So he's not going to forget that, right? He's going to continue to use this. The same way, if you had already given this kind of a comfort to the farmers that you start using a digital advisory service, nobody is going to come at your doorstep. That's one thing that they are learning hard way. That okay, when there's nothing works, we have to follow the rules, the new rules. So that is like digital transformation. So I'm looking at larger digital adoption happening at the upstreams of production, that is at the farm level, and farm mechanization is one part where since labors are moving and then they are they're not available right now. So eventually people would start looking at farm mechanization options, even though if the cost is slightly higher, which they are not used to it. And also there is this agri input marketplace farmers are used to walk into the store and buy all these agri inputs. Now as Aquaconnect, we are enabling e-commerce opportunities for farmers so that like it reaches their doorstep. That's one part of the story. And also due to this farm mechanization and farm automation systems, we would be getting a large pile of data. So with this pile of data, now we will be able to enable other services to the farmers, such as credit systems. Now the farmers is like we can put a score to the farmer. This is the credit worthiness. This is the risk score of a farmer based on the data that we are getting. So these are some of the future trend that might continue. Like once this COVID gets over, challenges get over, I don't see that people are getting back to the normal. So they will be eventually adopting some new things from this crisis that we had just been going through. And that's the upstream side of the intervention. The downstream side of the intervention will be something like now like people are not coming to your farm and then the middleman. I'm talking about the middleman. So the most impacted category would be middleman during this point of time. It is kind of opening up opportunities for digital marketplaces. Can you put it on mute for a moment? Okay. Is it good? Is it good right now? I could still hear there is a lag. I could hear my voice again.
This is good, but there is a lag. Actually, my mobile in between it came. I didn't know that I am on mute actually. So
Okay.
sorry, I'm muting.
No problem. No problem. Um, so that like I'm talking about at the downstream. So there would be like there was this new Atmanirbhar scheme that was talking about like 20,000 odd crores for providing infrastructure development for our sector. That is called Prime Minister's Matsya Sampada Yojana. So eventually, this is actually kind of be applicable to other sectors as well. I'm talking about agri as well as dairy sector. So I'm looking at integrated logistics for agri that's coming up, and some of you have been already doing hyperlocal farming, like the urban-centric farming. And eventually, with the data, we'll be able to provide food traceability solutions. So this will improve the value of the commodity that the farmers are producing. So pretty much these are the trends that I am seeing right now.
All right, that was a brilliant insight. Prabhav is also here with us, but I think there's a small technical difficulty, so he'd be sending in any questions that he has via chat. Meanwhile, Padma Kumar, if it would be great if you could also share some insight on the same and community farms' position during the whole lockdown.
Thank you, Liliga. Yeah, in fact, we are into essential service, right? So the lockdown actually, as far as business is concerned, it is in favor for us. And if you look at the overall sales, like Raj earlier mentioned, the sales doubled, the consumer base doubled, better consumer base now. All those things actually happened. At the same time, there are few things we realized.
Am I audible? Hi.
Prabhu,
Yes,
you are
Prabhav.
audible.
Yes.
Latika, should I continue? Or
Right, definitely. And then once you're done, I think Prabhav can also introduce himself and his data.
no problem, no problem. Thank you.
Okay.
See, generally, like nowadays, like one thing which I wanted to highlight is in between Raj also mentioned about the middle layer or the middleman who is actually helping with the farmers. But we generally, I personally would prefer to see the middle layer or middleman as a necessary evil kind of thing, which is very much needed for today's society. Like if you take him out of the picture, what would happen is actually the system would collapse because the system is built. This large country, the land parcels are scattered. Farmers have small land holding. It is scattered. Somebody is doing the aggregation job here. But actually, we are not competing with the middle layer here. But the problem that we have realized with the existing model today, which actually the many farmers benefited even during the COVID period or this period, lockdown period, is that with most of the time with middle layer kind of situation, what happens is farmer become a hidden entity. When farmer become a hidden entity, that prevents him to create, the opportunity for him to create a loyal consumer base or brand value for his produce. The outcome of that one is every harvest become a new harvest for him. He will not be able to carry forward the legacy of his previous harvest to the next harvest. That's a problem that they are actually facing. One of the problems. So because of that, what happens if somebody is doing best effort or new innovations in their the farming techniques, he will not get a differentiated pricing for because he is nobody, right? He is a hidden entity. So the opportunity for farmer to get a differentiated pricing for his produce is also prevented. Now during the lockdown situation, what happened is actually like now the communities are open up and people are actually at home. So many farmers with the capability to reach out to the societies, they could actually reach out to them, and the people started realizing these people. Oh, there are people like this actually. But the situation would eventually change when people started going to the office because now 24/7 they are at home and they are available. But once the offices are open and people start going to the office, the situation will not happen. Now, with the model, like community farm kind of model, what we are trying to do is we are trying to connect consumer societies with and in fact, we started 3 years before this, like societies, the farmers and agri startups with the societies, and help them to buy from this farmer or directly. And there in which what happens is that the visibility of the farmer increases and the brand value of the farmer also increases. But you will have to solve certain problems here, like logistics and supply chain, those kind of things, and technology, those kind of things we solve. So we as a community farm, we are actually doing this. Now many farmers actually benefited out of this situation. Now, like that earlier pointed out, like during the lockdown, and now the lockdown is ending, we have seen so many innovations also happening in this area. For example, the concepts of group or community-centric buying. There are many startups I have seen. I mean, we can name bunch of it actually, like apps who have come up. They are solving this kind of problem. They are not solving some of the crucial or fundamental problems like logistics or the operations technology. Those kind of things they may not be solving, but they are still creating a new way of buying the old Groupon kind of concepts probably. For communities or the power of communities, people living together, right, where societies and all, is getting highlighted here, and many technology solutions are actually happening. And I would definitely see many more innovations, including my company also, community farm also, many innovations happening in terms of that area to enable the group model or the group community model in terms of the natural language processing, especially in the AI and machine learning and those areas, I think. And obviously, we are also going into similar directions. Overall, I think the sector, with all these things which are happening, the export kind of sector is definitely impacted, but the domestic market, if you look at it, many places it is working in favor of farmers because, I mean, specifically from the perspective that we are actually thinking that farmer should be an open entity, should not be a hidden entity, and we should help him to create a consumer base for him or a brand value for him for the benefit of, because what happens is when we did a recent survey, almost 80% of the farmers, when we discussed with them, almost 80% of them said their next generation, they don't want the next generation to get onto the farming. That's because they are unable to make, there's a huge disparity between the income that they generate in the agri sector and the services sector. So these things are actually changing with the current things and with the new technology which are actually coming in there. And there are a bunch of other startups, they are working in terms of new products. We know that, like in terms of grading and other things, the spectral analysis and all those things, there are new startups which are coming in this area. So I assume that post-COVID will create a hell lot of opportunities for many more startups to come in this sector and solve many different areas, and that will help collectively us to solve the problems that the average Indian farmer is facing today.
Thank you, Padma Kumar. Unfortunately, Prabhav is still facing some technical difficulties, so he won't be joining us as a speaker, but he has sent in a few questions from his side that he was hoping Raj could answer. So the first one was, what are the issues that Aquaponics faces? And if there's any non-IT problem like shelf life or the fishes or water quality issues that you faced?
So, how much time do I have, Latika, to answer
We
this?
have time. We have time.
Okay, so in that case, like, no, I can walk you guys through what is happening here, what is the sector is all about, because this is a niche sector, not many of you would have understood the dynamics here, right? So,
I think there's a lag from Prabhav's side, which is why he wasn't able to speak. But yeah.
Prabha, can I request you to put it on mute so that I'm listening to myself while I'm speaking. Prabha, can you hear me?
I think he'll receive the thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Latika will be able to do that.
I think
Latika, you are the host. You will be able to.
No, I. That's
he received it like with the lag.
yeah.
He received it right now. Okay, so let me give you some stats about Indian fisheries. So India. How many of you know that India is the largest exporter of frozen shrimp? And we that's good. So we are earning close to $5 billion from just exporting one species, that is vaname, that is a shrimp, that is white shrimp, right? So how many of you know that like we are the second largest producer of fishes in the world, just next to China, right? So India is earning close to 50,000 crores from export of seafoods, both aquaculture, shrimp as well as other fishes, right? So we produce low value fishes and high value shrimps. It is valued to close to $17 billion. So $6 billion comes from shrimp, and then $11 billion comes from fishes. So fish is being largely consumed in the domestic market. So this is, you need to actually bifurcate this market into two segments. So 95% of shrimp that is produced here, it is being exported. So that's kind of a different value chain. And $11 billion worth of shrimp is being consumed from the farm or within the 50 kilometers radius of the farm only. Okay, so that supply chain is completely different than the shrimp supply chain. So I'm talking about then I can come about the demography of the farmers also. So if I'm talking about a shrimp farmer, small and medium holding shrimp farmer, please do not use the word marginal. Like this doesn't apply here. One agri farmer will be investing anywhere close to 70,000 rupees per to 1 lakh rupees per acre, depending upon the crop. But here, shrimp farmer invests 10 lakh rupees per acre. I'm talking about 10x spend on the farm, and he is gaining 15 lakh rupees in return in 5 months. And that demography is completely different from agri sector, right? So there is a disparity between him and the fish farmers also. So the fish farmers will be spending 1/3 of what the shrimp farmer is spending, but still he is richer than the agri farmers largely, right? So the COVID has impacted the sector differently. Like I talked about the bifurcation, right? The fish farmers, it had impacted differently, and shrimp farmers, it had impacted differently, because shrimp goes into the global value chain. So when the restaurants in America, US or Europe, Japan has closed down, so the buying, the demand from those market have reduced largely for the past 5 months, right? So your production only is not affected here. Your market overseas, import market are also affected. So none of the container is moving. There are few, I would say like 20-30% of containers are moving, but there was a huge impact on the demand side. So that's one major problem. See, logistics had been a major challenge in the shrimp at the import side. So while we are talking about the production side, it had the same fate of any other agricultural value chain, because the farm, as I already told you, the farm inputs were not reaching the farmers, and also we were not able to take out the materials, the harvested shrimps, back to the processing plant. If it comes to processing plant, there are no workforce who would be able to process that, and everything has been closed, and then the whole system has been broken for the past 5 months. So that's the kind of scenario in the shrimp sector. If you're talking about fish sector, as I told you, like it's largely like it's a slightly longer gestation period in fish. Shrimp farmer goes for 1 to 5 months of culture period. If you are talking about fish farmers, he will be doing like 1 to 8 months of culture. So whoever has gone like in February, they will be harvesting by September or October. So that's the kind of a timeline we are looking at. So they were not hit really bad, because shrimp farmers have to do for a bulk harvesting at one time. He has to send it somewhere, because we are talking about 3 tons of material, 4 tons of material. But fish farmers, they can do partial harvesting. So there the impact is much lower, because it is domestically oriented. Like the usage, the consumption is happening in the nearby regions only, so that they were able to manage it pretty okay, I would say. They were impacted, but I'm not saying like they are hard hit by this change of working. So pretty much that's the my take on like the COVID impact. If you wish to me dig deeper into this sector, I can do it in
Raj,
further.
I have a couple of questions actually. Like, it's more about the technology side of it that you guys are actually doing. This Aquaponics specifically, like I read that like the deep tech technologies, specifically in the AI side and the machine learning side, is actually helping you to solve a couple of problems that the average farmer is actually facing. And it would be helpful if you could actually connect us with how this one is actually solving, and also throw some lights about probably like what all are the areas where probably the unsolved problems are there, right? Probably the upcoming the next generation probably can look onto like look onto those areas, and they can also try innovating similar areas, actually similar lines.
Sure. So there are a lot of problems in the world. So there is a lot of opportunity because of that. So I'm really inviting startups to work on this sector. So to get further deep into it, so I need to walk you through how this whole aquaculture activities are happening. So some people get confused with the aquaponics as well. So aquaponics is different from aquaculture. So I'm talking about breeding the aquatic animal. Like let's say, like in India, we breed shrimp, and we breed IMC, Indian major carps. So we are talking about katla, rohu, mirhal, tilapia, and catfish, right? Pangasius we call. So these are the major species that we grow. And okay, I'll specifically talk about shrimp farming right now. So which is a premium activity, and which fetches 1 kg is 400 rupees in the farm gate. So that's the kind of a premium that it commands. So okay, to become what happens is a farmer goes to hatcheries to purchase the baby shrimps. We call it post larvae. They buy it, and then they take it to their ponds. Usually a pond would be about 1 acre in size, and it would be like 5 to 6 feet deep, right? So that's the pond you can imagine, right? It is a shallow, high turbidity water would be there, right? You won't see the pond bottom at all. So you would be stocking these baby shrimps in those ponds for about 120 days to 150 days. During this point of time, you would administer feed. They're like babies, like you need to feed them like 3 times a day or 4 times a day, and you need to keep feeding. And the 60% of the cost goes into the feeding the animal, right? Remember this point: 60% of the feed goes into the feeding, right? So since you also need to administer pharma products, also healthcare products, so that like you would be able to keep the animal in good health, and you need to add minerals so that like you can change the composition of the water. So there are like, to become a successful shrimp farmer, you need to manage 4 categories of information, 4 categories of parameters. So the first one is water quality. I think Prabhav asked some question on that. Water quality management you have to do, growth management you have to do, and feed management you have to do, and then health management you have to do. So there are about 30 to 40 parameters I'm talking about. Imagine this is a bit complex. How a farmer is managing to do all these activities? No clue.
So there is a lot of IoT sensors and other things are also involved in the solution.
I'm coming about it, right? So they are already using AI, that is ancestral intelligence or anecdotal intelligence, right? So like my neighbor has done this, and I mean he got a Mercedes, and I will also do this, and I will buy Mercedes, and I'll buy home, right? So this is the kind of thought that is ingrained into us, that like his pond condition is different, he is administering a different feed, he is administering a different healthcare product, and how can you kind of replicate the same success here? No, you cannot, right? So there is a tussle between this, ancestral intelligence and artificial intelligence here. So this, we are at the cusp of this transformation right now. So as I told you before, like, let me walk you through a little deeper into the subject. First part, water quality management. So you need to manage dissolved oxygen, ammonia, alkalinity, salinity, and vibrio load. Vibrio load is like a bacterial load in the pond. So this is a kind of a very complex aspect which farmers do not manage it scientifically as of now, right? They are doing their job, but ours is one of the lowest output farms in the whole Southeast Asia and South Asia region, right? While the others are using their resources effectively, we are putting more resources to get less output. So that's where there is a challenge, right? The first thing I talked about, water quality. The second thing is very interesting and important. So feed conversion ratio. So one has to manage feed conversion ratio effectively. So like if you are an efficient farmer, you will manage the feed conversion ratio into 1:1.4 or 1.5. The ideal would be 1.3, but nobody would be able to achieve that. That's kind of academic, right? So let me come about, like, what is feed conversion ratio? Aquaculture is touted to be one of the most efficient protein production system in the world, right? Let me compare it with beef production. So beef is the most unsustainable meat that you can produce in the earth. A cow, to get like 1 kg of meat of beef, you would have to feed her about 8 kgs. It's 1:8, right? And that's kind of crazy unsustainable. I'm talking about then lamb is 1:4.5. All red meters on the unsustainable range. And if we take poultry, it is 1:2.5. So when it comes to shellfish as well as fish, shellfish is this crustacean, that is shrimp that we are talking about, prawn or shrimp, right? It is 1:1.2, as the scientists say. No, you cannot do that in Indian farms. Maybe like you can go up to 1.4, 1.5 is, I think it is most okay, sustainable. But unfortunately, the farmers are overfeeding the animal. Like that is that goes above 2 also. So there are 2 implications if you are overfeeding the animal. One, and the shrimp can eat as much as it can. It cannot eat, like, it cannot, like, you feed more, it cannot get fatter, right? That's the first fact. And then you are incurring a lot of cost under, as I told you already, 60% of your cost goes into feeding the animal. If the FCR goes from 1.4 to 2, 1/4 of the cost is already increasing on your production. And the other part, it is actually polluting your pond base. It goes down to the pond base and it pollutes the pond base, and it kind of creates ammonia gas into the water. So again, you need to apply minerals to reduce ammonia concentration into the water. Why are you doing that? It's because my neighbor is doing, I'm also doing. So that's the kind of logic that gets in there. And I'm talking about then growth. You need to be constantly measuring the growth, and then you need to compare it with FCR. To arrive at FCR, you need to watch the growth. And then the fourth part, the health anomalies. There aren't much of scientific methods for them to analyze the even physical inspection can do, or that PCR testing also can do. But the farmers are very, very lazy, I would say, right? Or I can term it other ways. The access to such knowledge or facility is not very close to them. So I talked about effectively like 4 points here. So that is where the problem is there. So imagine, how can we enable this farmer to do this activity effectively? So even a technician, farm technician, who has who has professionally educated and trained, like BFSC, Bachelor of Fisheries Science graduate in aquaculture or marine biology, they would be able to provide solution to them. But again, the difference between him and a machine would be kind of uncomparable, right? incomparable. So it's kind of a machine would look into like all 30 different parameters, and then it would be able to derive a model for better feeding efficiency, better growth, and also it can predict diseases, which we are trying. It's still under pilot. So this is where
Sorry to interrupt. So with these technologies, what's the percentage of increase in the sustainability ratio from 1 is to 1.4 for this shrimp business?
okay. So straightforward answer is our sample size is very low right now. So I'm talking about out of 600,000 farmers, I'm talking about 6,000 farmers, right? So what we have seen in our engagement, we were able to achieve like if some farmer is doing 1.7 or 1.8, we will be able to bring him down to 1.4, which is a substantial saving in terms of cost of production and improvement in the environmental condition, the water condition in the pond, right? So this is where we are. Now we are offering data-driven decision-making capabilities to the farmers. So what we have done is we have created all the algorithms and backend machine learning models, and we are constantly receiving the data from the farmers, and we are improving our frameworks. So that's happening. Eventually, we are reducing this to a certain this application is becoming an advisor to them, right? You provide information into this mobile application, it throws suggestion at you. So that's what we are doing with them. And you may kind of come up with another questions here, because data collection is one of the, we could do wonders with data. But imagine how we are going to collect this information from the farmers. As I already pointed out, there is a very low tech adoption on the ground. So the next follow-up question would be something like that. I was actually expecting that. Perhaps Prabha is still on mute.
I was actually going to, that was playing in my mind, because how would you reach out to them and collect the information that you need to collect? So yeah.
Totally. I expect that every forum where I spoke, they would be coming up with the very next question would be something like, okay, now tell me how are you collecting the data, right? So the collection of data can happen we're all techies, right? Like the immediate solution would be something like, okay, put up an IoT sensor and communication model so that you will be getting all the data at your development center. So no, that's not going to happen. That's not going to work here, because so there were many startups who were trying to integrate IoT solutions for aquaculture sector, especially in Indian. We say brackish water aquaculture, freshwater aquaculture. So I told you, if you could remember correctly, it's like 6 feet deep pond where we are storing the water, and there is a lot of turbidity in the water, right? So I'm talking about there has to be some 15 to 16 parameters that has to be taken into account from the water quality. So the immediate solution that every other technology guy can think of is drop a live monitoring system which can take feeds about dissolved oxygen, ammonia, nitrate, and something, so and so, right? So what happens is there is a capital cost that is involved in putting up that sensor. I'm telling you, there is farmers are investing 10 lakh rupees. The sensor would be anywhere between 1 lakh to 1.5 lakhs to have a live monitoring sensor. So it doesn't make much of commercial sense to the farmer to implement such systems. Two, and there is a lot of maintenance that has to happen, because every day you need to take out the sensor and then clean it and then put it back. So I'm talking about recalibration. So farmers are really not into maintaining these aspects. It's a rugged workplace. You cannot expect them to clean the optical sensor every now and then to get the data. So then we need to look at other ways of doing this. There is one more problem. One sensor that's been used in this water cannot be taken to the other pond in the same form, because there are some biosecurity issues. If this pond has got some disease outbreak, you will be spreading it in other ponds as well. So what they would do is like, no, we are not taking this water to any other pond. So that's the kind of sensitive issue as well there, because some might ask like, why don't you use one device across all the ponds? No, it's not possible that way. The other possibility is something like reducing the cost of this automation, so which will eventually happen. I'm not ruling out this IoT adoption. IoT adoption will eventually happen when the cost of sensors go down. That's one part, and the convenience of this maintenance also should be improved. So since we are the
But in this case, without this analysis, like these solutions, how is the data collection happens at your end when, for this
that's
solution?
a follow part, Padma. Right? So how are we collecting that is through the human intervention. So we have created Swiggy for water quality diagnostics, right? So what we had enabled is like the problem with farmers, and let me tell you like how lazy they are. So it's always the tomorrow, like just like us, right? Just like us, like I'll do it tomorrow. So what happens is your water quality keeps changing every day. In a day itself, it's changing. It's unlike agriculture, like the soil remains like static, and then there is a very little progression in a day. But in water quality, if you stop your aerator, it stops providing dissolved oxygen to the animal, and the animal would float in 6 hours straight, right? There goes your 10 lakh rupees. So it's very complex there. So what we'll have to do is we are encouraging farmers not to delay. So to be able to do that, to promote technology disruption to adoption, we need to do one thing. We should go along with the farmer, like without disrupting much of his daily activities. So this farmer is already taking water quality diagnostics. What he does is he takes the water into the old Pepsi bottle or the liquor bottle that is in the farm, right? So he takes the water and pours it. That there itself, this water is contaminated, right? He then drives to the lab and then he tests that water, and he needs to drive back to get the results. Like they would be printing out in a piece of paper and then be giving it to them, and that will only tell what is the DO, what is the alkalinity, salinity, and nitrate, and ammonia, right? That's it. It can provide you. So we have we thought about it, how we should be able to adopt our solution to that. So we can come up with an easy solution that like, okay, I'm installing this IoT device, you need to buy it, right? Nobody is going to adopt. So we adopted to the farmers' practices. So we have enabled the collection and delivery partner. Like there is one local youth who is assigned to go to the specific farms who have already subscribed to our services, and these are the guys who would be walking into the farms and then collecting the water sample and dropping in our labs, the partner labs, right? So we have this backend system that captures all the values. The moment we get the result, we just send a notification. You see how we have simplified their life. You don't need to walk into the lab. You don't need to collect the water sample. You don't need to even break your head on like reading these results. And now with the notification, we are sending a advisory information saying that like your ammonia level is high at the threshold. You need to do this. You need to reduce the feeding, and you need to use this minerals so that like the ammonia level is reducing in your pond. So it's kind of, we are building our intervention in a very, very user friendly manner at the ground. So one, we are kind of getting more data with integrity. I mean, I'm emphasizing that integrity part, because we are the one collecting, we are the one processing that water sample, and we are the one providing the results to them. So that's how we are collecting larger information from the farmers. So that's water quality. I'm talking about some 16 parameters, right? So the feeding information or a growth information, a farmer has to enter in a very simple text window. That's it. Like it's something like sending a WhatsApp message, I have fed this many kilograms in this pond, and the growth in, like, they measure the growth once in 2 weeks. So they have to measure that, like, this in this pond the shrimp is weighing about 20 grams or 15 grams based on the date of culture. And if there is anything different anomaly, if they found in the animal health, they would be able to take a picture and send it back to us, so that our aquaculture officers would be able to talk to them and provide them necessary advisory services to them.
Right. Another question that Prabhav has sent in, he's asking if all the shrimp farms are usually close by geographically.
Yeah, that's very correct. Because, like, they are all concentrated in the coastal region. So if you're talking about shrimp farms, largely 70% of production happens in Andhra itself, right? And the rest is happening in the coasts of Gujarat, Odisha, West Bengal, and Tamil Nadu. So these are the major shrimp production countries. And surprisingly, Haryana and Punjab also have created about 2,000 acres of shrimp ponds last year.
Okay, Padma, if you have any other questions that you'd like to address, because we've already run into 45 minutes, so I think that's all the time we have for today. So if there's a short, like a small question that you'd want answered, I think Prabhav has sent in a few other questions. If the shrimp input has been streamlined, or if it's like the fertilizer market where there's a lot of players.
Okay. Yes, it's a highly commercial activity. At first, it's like a livelihood, and shrimp is a commercial activity. And there are about 15 feed manufacturers who are in this ecosystem, and there are about 50 to 70 companies that provide pharma inputs to this ecosystem. So, as I told you, it is $7 billion opportunity. So there is a lot of ecosystem players who are providing services to this industry.
Right. And another last question from Prabhav was if there's a particular district in Karnataka where shrimp farming has been picking up.
Usually in Karnataka, I have heard in the Mangalore coast there are shrimp farming activities happening, but I haven't heard substantial shrimp farming development happening in Karnataka, but the fish farming is happening.
Most of the supply, the shrimp in Bangalore market specifically is coming from Andhra, because there are a couple of farmers, people who supply shrimp through community farm platform.
Absolutely right. They are coming from they're all farm grown shrimps.
The Vana, that farm prawns, correct.
That's right.
Indian Vana, some name is there, no? Yeah.
It's Vaname.
Vaname, correct.
Right. I'll read out one last question from Prabhav, and then I think we could wrap up the session. So his question is, is there anyone working on the post-harvest shelf life extension solution?
Okay. There are many players who would love to do that in the Indian market, but unfortunately, Indian people do not eat frozen meat largely. They do not prefer to eat frozen meat, right? So there are many companies who would like to invest in that, but unfortunately, the perception among the consumers have to change, because in my childhood, I also believed that the frozen meat is really bad, right? Once I got to understand how frozen meat is superior than the live seafood, caught seafood in the fish markets. I would ended up with this observation. Usually it takes about 8 hours from the sea caught fish, like it takes about 8 hours from the boat to the market where you are buying, right? During that point of time, it goes under like different temperatures, right? We do not have like fishing boats which have got an integrated chilling facility. So they do the ice kind of freezing, and then gets to the harbors, and then they would go for an auctioning, and then they buy it, and then I do not know how they are transporting. So by the time it reaches the fish market, almost 50% it's already gone. Like the freshness is already gone. So like the frozen industry is much better, because what do we do is, like, as soon as you catch these the shrimps or fishes from the water, from these farms, they are like taken in the the cold storage facility vans, right? And then they have been kept in the right temperature till the time it reaches the processing plant. From the processing plant, they do the they kind of do the quality checking, and then they take it for cleaning, and productization. Like, they would always talk about the product name, something like head on is like with the head, and headless is without head, and then deveined. There will be like some gut that they have to remove it. So these are the product categories that they talk about, and finally it kind of comes to our supermarket shelves. So the ones that you see in Bangalore, they were not available in any other any other small towns. So you will find these IFB frozen shrimps in the supermarket shelf, or there are like several other companies right now too, but they are not largely preferred in the smaller towns, because there is this perception that the frozen food is bad. So
I think that I'll just add to few points there. Generally, the point is very clear. Both for fish and the prawns and the shrimp, those segment, the frozen is not used. But one of the problem which is happening with many of these outlets which are actually keeping, one is the power failure. Many of them, they don't have the power backup. Like, these are frozen items they are keeping in the freezer. So many a times I have seen in many shops that the freezer is off actually, maybe because of a power outage, and after 3-4 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours, then whatever the time it is, and again it will come. And so these are the things that as a regular customer that we have seen here, and that is one of the reason probably people are actually not using. And the second thing is actually, like, there is a business like a tug of war here. There are, I don't want to name a couple of, there are few large players in India, especially in the fish segment, just for example, in the B2C players actually. And their tagline itself is that the fish is not seen inside the freezer, right? The freezer is not seen; it is iced. So as if they are highlighting that this is superior to something else actually. All these things put together, and then people who are on the coastal side, they have a perception that, like, if they put ice on there, they don't consume that particular fish. They see that the taste is actually gone. All those things comes into the picture. And second thing is actually, like, you don't know how old. It's generally like 3 months old frozen item, and especially when it comes to our Indian mindset, actually, it's very difficult for us to digest. Oh man, this is quote so old. All these things put together is adding up to things there actually, right? And the thawing is properly not done. The taste is another factor many people don't know. All those things comes add together, and is what is creating. Plus, the cost is a little higher than the. I mean, I do have recently Thailand-based company with one chicken supplier actually, and they have a few. They were primarily. I mean, they have outlets there in. I mean, in and around Karnataka, not outlet actually, like farms actually. So they were primarily exporting. Now, after the COVID, what happened is most of these guys, the export is actually cut. So they are now looking for the domestic segment here actually, right? So, and so there also, like, what happens, they have the chilled one as well as the frozen one, but the problem is that the frozen one is priced much more higher, because they were primarily target on the export segment actually. So Indian average buyers are actually very much price conscious, and whenever this price increase, they see that the average buyer just move away from that. All these things add up together is what is creating the feeling that the frozen food is probably is not.
totally.
That's what I felt.
Latika, if I have 2 minutes, I will acknowledge Padma whatever he has said. I will, and then end my speech. Um,
Definitely.
I kind of not kind of, I completely agree with you. The factors that you were told, that kind of adds in like why we are kind of not going ahead with the frozen market. So it's kind of a chicken egg story, right? Like it's something like, until you kind of create those cold chain infrastructure, it's not going to take off. So until there is a perceptual change among consumer, the infrastructure is not going to be built. right? So somewhere we need to come up with the plan that somewhere the consumption has to be improved. And one sign that I had seen, one silver lining of COVID that I have seen, I used to order this frozen meat by from Big Basket. The start of COVID, none of the frozen meat was available in any of these places, because people were not allowed to go out. The meat shops were not open. People are not really sure whether this meat was clean, it was not contaminated, right? So they were like believing, okay, I will go with the frozen meat because that's been frozen for like 1 or 2 weeks before, so nothing is going to happen to me. So imagine, so when there was a kind of a need, the new products have been taken off, right? So that is when even my mom was eating the frozen fish or meat. So eventually this will change once you start giving that kind of an exposure, right? So like I would always say that, like, if you promote the frozen industry, it will eventually balance the pricing, and eventually that impact will be reaching the farmers. I'm talking about positive, right? So the moment there is a lot of harvesting happens, the market is like, the supply is going high and demand is going low, right? The prices will fall. So if you are going to process your food, the market can be manipulated and managed. I mean, sorry about the manipulation, I'm not talking about manipulation, I'm talking about management there. So you can effectively manage the supply so that you can effectively manage the demand. Then the pricing fluctuations can be managed at a frequency where the farmers can get benefited better.
All right. Thank you for a wonderful session to all our panelists. I think if there's any further questions, you can always connect off the meet. This has been very insightful, even for me personally. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out this evening. Yeah, we'd be ending the sessions.
Thank you, Latika. Thanks for your time and patience listening.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thanks, Raj. Thank you so much, and thanks, Viveka and Conquest team for arranging this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.